Okay, good evening, everyone. Um, this is Lab 3. Uh, for Lab 3, design the interface on your own. This is my interface. I won't spend time on designing the interface, but there's one thing that I'll show you which I've not talked about in Lab 1 and Lab 2. So by watching our Lab 2 and Lab 1 videos, you'd be able to get the concept behind designing this particular interface. Okay, so this is my interface for Lab 3. What I'll add to it is this particular section. Yes, this part. It says when a purchaser does not have a trade in, then the value 0.00 should display in the trade in text box control. So the trade in text box control. And before anything, I've gone through the process of naming all my text boxes. So you have to also go through the pain of doing it. So when I check the properties of this particular text box, see that I've named it lot number text box. If I go to this one, um, sorry, let me dock it. Okay, so if I check this one, you see that it's called year text box. This one is also called vehicle make text box. So I've named each control, and we all know how to name it. So if you have not named the controls, make sure you name it because it will help us doing the code. So if you don't know how to name it, you just select the control, come to the properties, scroll down, and then change the name property to the name you wish to give the text box or any control on the form. Okay, so what I'll do is so the question was, it says when a purchaser does not have a trade in, then the value of 0.00 should be displayed in the trade in text box. So this is my trade in text box, and to do that I'll change the text property of the text box to 0.00 so that it will display a 0.00 on default before it is changed. So if the user does not type anything, the 0.00 is going to show. Okay, so I'm done with that. Now we go to the actual coding. Okay, so the coding starts from here. It says the compute button, but I'll tackle the easy ones first. I'll tackle the reset button. After the reset button, I'll tackle the exit button so that we do the compute and then the total button last. So let's tackle the reset button. The reset button says we should clear all data input and output text box controls except the trade in text box. So for the trade in text box, we are not to clear it, but we are to set the controls text property to 0.00. So back to 0.00. You have to uncheck all the checkboxes. You have to reset the exterior extra radio button to none, and then set focus to the lot number. So that is what we are going to do right now. Double click on the reset button. Okay, so I'm going to set all the input and output controls to empty. So the lot number text box. So the lot number text box. So I cleared the lot number text box. I cleared the year text box. I also clear the price text box. Clear the discount text box. And since there are different ways of clearing the text box, I can use the other methods too. For example, the extras text box, I use extras text box dot text. So the text property of that text box, I'm setting it to an empty string. So string dot empty. So this is another way of clearing the text box. So the text property of the extras text box is set to string.empty. This is something we have done in lab 1 and lab 2, so I think everyone is conversant with this. So I can also use subtotal text box dot text is equal to string dot empty. Another way of clearing the text box is by setting the text property to an empty string. So for the sales tax text box dot text, the text property of it, I'm setting it to an empty string, so double quotes without anything. So I'll set the total due text box. So all the text boxes that I've given here, lot number, year, whatever, are text boxes over here that I changed their names. So this is the price text box, this is the discount, this is the extras, subtotal, sales tax, trade in, the total due text box. This is the lot number, the year. So I've changed their name property to the names that I'm using inside the code. So make sure you do same. So total due text box, I'm also setting it to an empty string. So these are all the text boxes, the input and output text boxes. So when you are doing this, you can even use a comment over here, place a comment over here, clearing input and output text boxes. So the next thing is to also clear the check boxes. So clearing check boxes. Okay, so the first checkbox, let me check. So the first checkbox, I gave it the name of tiles checkbox, gave this HD radio, gave this built-in GPS, and gave this floor mat. So I'm going to clear all of them too. So I have tiles checkbox. So we are clearing the checked property. So tiles checkbox are checked. So we are setting the checked property of that particular checkbox to false. If you set it to true, then it will remain checked. But since we are to remove the checked property of it, we set it to false. So the floor mat checkbox dot checked, set that one to false too. Set the built-in GPS dot checked. Again, this is something that we have done before in lab 1 and 2. That's why I'm rushing through it. So the last one is HD radio dot checked. Set that one to false. So let's look at the instructions again. So the instructions says we should clear all input, we should uncheck all checkboxes. We have done that. We should reset the exterior extra radio button back to none. Okay. And then we set focus to the lot number. So when you look at the design, there's the exterior asterisk. The question says that we should set it back to none when the reset button is clicked. So if a user changes it and clicks the reset button, it should come back to the none. So what we do is give a comment, activate none radio button. So the none radio button dot checked will be set to true. So if the reset button is clicked, the none radio button will be the check property of that particular button will be set to what? True. So we have done that, and then we set focus to, so set focus. So we are setting focus to the lot let me check again. The name of the text box is lot number text box. So we are setting focus to that particular checkbox. Sorry, that particular text box. So lot number text box dot focus. Since it is a method, we use the open and closing brackets. So our reset button, let's check if there is another instruction. Okay, so the question said we should clear all data except the trade in text box. For that one, you should set the control to what? 0.00. So what you do is to give a comment as default trade in. So we are going to set the trade in text box is text property. So we are setting the text property of the trade in text box to 0.00. So the text property of the trading text box is set to 00 when the reset button is clicked. And then there was one checkbox that I forgot to do, which is this particular checkbox, the wholesale dealer checkbox. So let me add that one to it. So wholesale dealer discount checkbox dot checked. So as I said, the names you give here would depend on the names you give to the checkboxes or your controls on the form, and make sure it's not the same as mine. Okay, so we are done with the reset button. Let's tackle the close button, the exit button, sorry. So I'll double click on the exit button. Let's check the instructions for the exit button. It says when the button is clicked, do not automatically close the form. Instead, write code to only close the form if the application user responds yes to the question shown in this figure. The code should default to selection to the no button. Okay, so when you look at this figure, you realize that this figure is a message box. So the question says that when we click on the exit button on the form, this message box should appear. So there are a few things you should note about a message box. So this is the message itself. The message itself says exit application, then a bracket comes y/n, then the question mark comes. So it shows this question. You look at the title bar here. The title bar also shows exit and then a question mark. So the message box shows this message and this on the title bar, and you see that the buttons over here are yes and no. The buttons is not okay and cancel. the button is yes and no, and then the question says that it should default to no when the message box appears. So it should default, the no button should be activated when the button appears. And you see that there's an icon over here indicating that this is a question. So this is a question that the message box is going to display when the exit button is clicked. So you are going to design this message box and assign it to a variable to keep the answer that the user selects. So if the user selects yes, that answer will be stored inside a variable. If the user selects no, that answer will be stored in a variable. So we will declare a variable to store the answer that the user chooses from this message box. So that is the logic that we are going to use for the exit button. Note, this is the message. This will show on the title bar. The buttons are yes and no, and then there's an icon here, a question mark icon, and then the default button should be what? No. So let's go back to the code. So as I said, we declare a variable, let's say exit answer, any name that you can give to it, and then we are declaring it as a dialog result. So that box is an example of a dialog box. So we are storing the result of that dialog into this particular variable. But this time around, we are not storing, we are just declaring the variable as a dialog result. Okay. So after declaring the variable, this is where we are going to store the result. So that particular variable, exit answer, is equal to, so I said that we are going to store the answer that the user clicks from that particular dialog box. So it means that we are going to show that particular dialog box. So message box dot show. So that dialog box is a message box. So message box dot show. The first parameter that we are going to give it is, let me show you, is this particular message over here. So that is the first argument or parameter that we are going to give to that particular message box. So the message is exit application bracket y/n, then the question mark. So that's the first thing that we do. So exit application, then the bracket comes y/n, then a question mark. So that is the message. You come outside the quotation mark, bring a comma, space. The next message is, the next parameter is the message over here at the title bar. So from the message over here, the next parameter is the one at the top here. You see that is exit and then question mark. So I'll go back to my code, bring my quotation mark, and then type exit and then the question mark. Come outside the quotation, bring my comma, and then a space bar. Let's go back to the message box. So after the message and then this one, the next thing is the buttons over here. So the buttons, we have only yes and no buttons. So that is what we are going to do. So we type message. So you see that it gives us options over here. So message box buttons, we have abort, try, ignore. So if you choose this one, the buttons that will show are abort, retry, and ignore. When you choose this one, the buttons that will show are cancel, try, continue. If you choose this one, OK will show. If you choose this one, OK and cancel will show. But what we are looking for is yes and no. It is not yes, no, cancel. It is yes and no. That's why we are going to select this one. You bring a comma, space, and then the question said that it should default to this no when the message box appears. So that is what we are going to do. So message, sorry, the next parameter is not the default one. The next parameter is the icon over here. So the icon over here is a question icon. So when I come here, continue to type, you see that the message box icon, we have asterisk, we have error, we have exclamation, we have the hand, we have the information. On your own, you can try any of them and see how it looks like, but the one we are interested in right now is the question. So message box icon, the question, as per the design that was given to us in the lab. You bring a comma. So the last parameter is where the default comes in. So the question says that it should default to the no button. So when you look here, you see that the buttons are yes and no. So yes is the button 1, no is what? Button 2. So when you look here, you see that the message box default button, we have the first one to be button 1, the second one button 2, button 3, button 4. So what we are interested in, because it is no, we are going to select the button 2. So we are done designing the message box. So this is the message box that will appear when the user clicks the exit button. Let's try and see. Let's run it and see. Okay, so if I click the exit button, you see that the message box or the dialog box appears. You see that the title here shows exit, and then the message over here, exit application, yes or no, with the question mark, and then the buttons are yes and no. And you see that it seems there is this thick blue something around the no, meaning it is defaulting to the no when the message box appears. So right now we are not done yet. You see that when I clicked on yes, still the forms didn't close. So we have to tackle that part too. So when the user clicks on yes, the form should close. That is what we are going to do now. Okay. So I'll come down, still at the exit button. So what we are going to tell it is that if the answer from this particular one, from this particular message box is yes. So you see that when the user clicks yes, that particular answer is going to store in this button, in this variable, sorry, in this particular variable. So we are going to say that if this particular answer stored in this variable is yes, then the form should close. So if the exit answer is equal to the dialog result, so if that answer that is stored over here is equal to the dialog result, now the dialog result, we have cancel, we have continue. So when the user clicks on cancel, that will be the dialog result. But this time around, we want to say that if the user clicks on yes, so if the exit answer is the same as the dialog result yes, so if the user clicks on yes, so we are comparing the answer. If the user clicks on yes, it will store inside this variable. So we are saying that if that particular variable is a yes, then something should happen. Then what should happen? The form, which is me, should close. So we declare the variable that will store the answer when a user clicks on a button on a dialog box. and then that dialog box, we showed that particular dialog box over here and stored the answer of that particular dialog box in this variable. And we are seeing that when the user clicks on it and then the answer was yes, then the form should close over here. So let's run it and see. So I click on the exit button, the dialog box shows, and I click on yes, the form closes. So we are done with the exit button. Please, this particular variable can be of any name. Let's try as much as possible to change the names over here. So if you change the name here, it means this should change. It means this should also change. Okay. So we are done with the reset, and then we are done with the exit button. I'll keep the compute button and the totals button in another video.